The sun had just begun to warm the wet earth when little Anika stepped barefoot onto the dusty path that led through the village. Her long braid swung gently behind her, and in her hand was a small basket worn and woven by her grandmother many years ago. Inside it, a single marigold rested. Anika was only 10, but in her eyes lived a depth that often silenced even the loudest gossips at the tea shop. She was the daughter of a potter who had passed away in an accident at the brick kiln. Her mother now worked in the fields and mended clothes in the evenings. But despite the hardship, the little mud house never stopped smelling of hope and turmeric. Each morning before school, Anika would pick a flower, always just one, and take it to the old banyan tree in the village square. She would sit quietly on its raised platform, place the flower at the foot of the tree, close her eyes, and whisper something only to the tree could hear. The villagers watched, puzzled. Children mocked her sometimes, but she never stopped. What does she pray for every day? Someone once asked. She doesn't pray, replied an old widow who sold sweets nearby. She listens. Intrigued, the village priest. One morning he approached her and asked, "Child, what do you find in this old tree?" Anika looked up, her eyes clear, silence, and answered. "But you never speak," he said. "I don't need to. The flower speaks." The priest chuckled, patting her head, and walked away, amused by her innocence. But word spread, and slowly people began to notice some changes. The grocer who used to argue with customers began smiling more. The drunk who shouted every night now sat under the tree in the evenings, quiet. Even the priest started sitting nearby, not to pierce, but just to watch. One day, the headmaster of the village school announced that a government inspector was coming to evaluate the school. The entire village was in a flurry. Walls were painted, uniforms were ironed, and the headmaster rehearsed speeches. But the night before the visit, the inspector's car broke down at the village edge. No one had a mechanic nearby, and no one knew what to do. Anika, who had come to leave her flower as usual, saw the confusion and walked up to the inspector. "You can stay at my home," she said, her voice small but firm. The inspector looked around, unsure. He had expected to be put up in a guest house or school quarters, not in a villager's home. But something in her tone, simple and without hesitation, made him nod. That night, in the small kitchen lit by a single oil lamp, the inspector sat on a wooden stall as Anika's mother served rice and lentils. The inspector, used to city food and air conditioning, was surprised by the warmth, by the laughter in the small house, by Anika's questions about stars and why people lie. They didn't speak of exams or reports, but of books, birds, the smell of rain. The next day, the inspector postponed the school inspection. Instead, he called the village together and said, "I have visited 100 schools, some with fancy buildings, some with charts and graphs, but this village, this girl, taught me something rare. Education isn't about information, it's about growth, and growth begins with listening." He paused, then pointed at Anika. "This girl didn't give a speech. She didn't shout slogans. She offered a flower, and in that I saw more wisdom than in 1,000 textbooks. From that day on, every morning others began to place a flower under the banyan tree. Some prayed, some wept, some sat silently like Anika. But the village changed. The banyan tree, once just shade for afternoon naps, became a symbol not of a religion or ritual, but for quiet understanding. Anika never claimed to be a teacher, yet she taught everyone to listen, to wait, to let the heart speak before the mouth did. Years later, when Anika had grown up and left to study science in the city, the tree remained, and every morning children would still come, each holding a single flower. They called it the flower sermon, and it needed no words.